All right, for those of you joining us on the recording, welcome to week 12 U.S. History Seminar. And we are going to get underway here. I'm going to do the screen sharing deal. I'm going to do that. And that. And I'm going to try something new. Aha, let's see if that works. All right, here we go. Okay, that should work. So just some announcements as we get underway. The last call for the test was on Wednesday, so that is now closed. I did go in this morning and make sure that anybody who had submitted that after about 2 o'clock yesterday, that their tests were marked in there, that they had done them. For the most part, there aren't actual scores yet. Now that I have the reading done for this week, I can start grading tests. For the U.S. history classes, I'm going to guess probably next week I'll have scores in. If you have a numerical score right now that is not a 0, that means you did not do the essay question. And so that means that there is nothing for me to personally grade, and so you have a grade. I noticed, number one, that accounted for like 40% of the test grade. If you didn't do the essay, your score was already going to be pretty low because the question that was based on the live sessions was 20 points, and the other two were 10 points each. So if that was you, then your score was automatically fairly low. I also noticed that for the most part, those that didn't do the essays, it was not because you ran out of time. I checked that because I wanted to be sure that, maybe they ran out of time. But for the most part, what I saw was those who didn't do the essays finished their attempt in like 30 minutes. I gave you an hour. So, if that's you, then I'm guessing, didn't watch the live session video. And so you didn't know that one, and the other two you were just lazy on. So, yeah. Do the essays. That's the lesson to be learned there. Unit 3 reading guide is now live in the course. Do it. Start it now. Well, when we get done. It is due Monday, November 30th, so I know that's weird. Usually our stuff's due on Friday. I'm giving you through the Thanksgiving break on that. But this is a really short unit. It's only 9 textbook sections. It's 3 chapters, but each one of those chapters somehow, I don't know how, was only 3 sections long. So it shouldn't take you all that long to do that, but start now. Don't wait till, that Sunday night or the grace period ends on the 4th, which is Friday. Don't wait till the 3rd and then try and get it done. It will be, number one, bad. Like, it'll be bad work. And I can see that. I'm not an idiot. And the other thing is, it won't adequately prepare you because the test will go live on Monday the 30th. You will not be adequately prepared if you just slop the reading guide together. You won't be adequately prepared to take the test. Some people are just really good test takers, and they're going to be fine regardless because they just my wife is one of those people. She can take a multiple choice test and score at least 70% on it simply because she knows how to take multiple choice tests. She's one of those freakish people that I wish I could do that. I can't. I have to study my ass off for those things. But yeah, do the reading guide. Number one, it's 75 points. So if you slop it together and you miss a bunch of stuff, I have to deduct points. And you're just not going to pick up the material. Start now. Do a little bit every day. and it won't be that bad. If you wait till the day before it's due, it's like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. You're just never going to finish. Make sure you're doing the seminar work. For this week, that is week 12 CNN 10 News Quiz and week 12 Seminar Journal. Remember, that cuts off. You cannot do that after Monday at 8 a.m. So that's kind of my little deal with that. So if you're watching this, on Friday and you think, oh, I'll just do the seminar work next week, hop on over the weekend, do it. Don't lose out on those 20 points. Yeah. Remember, the discussion forums I do assign a grade to them. If you don't comment, if you don't respond, then you lose points. Don't do that to yourself. You had a break during test week. I'm sort of committing to not doing discussions during test weeks. But beyond that, we have one every week. Hop on early, get it done. Just don't wait till the last minute on stuff, guys, really. Next week, because it's Thanksgiving week, we obviously are not going to have a full week of class time. So we will only have the seminar on Tuesday that week, Tuesday at 10 a.m., which is the normal time. But we won't have one on Thursday. I'm not doing one on Thanksgiving Day. I'm sorry. If you really want to talk to me, I guess you can Zoom call me and we can talk while I'm making mashed cauliflower or something if you want. But yeah, please don't. So yeah, 10 o'clock. If you can't make that 10 o'clock session on Tuesday, it is on you, like it normally is if you can't make the live sessions, to hop on, watch that video, and do the seminar work. Don't skip out on it. I know people are going places, which try to stay home if you can. Please stay healthy. Any questions about any of the announcement stuff? Going once, going twice. By the way, if you have questions as we're going through, please unmute yourself and ask. My desk setup, I wish I could show it to you, but unfortunately I'm using my phone as a camera. I have 3 monitors. I have my laptop in the center. If you ever were in my classroom at CMR, any of you last year, I had a big 27-inch iMac that I use as a display on the one side, and then I have a little portable monitor I can take with me, but it's set kind of far back, and that's what the chat is on. And so if you say something to me in the chat while we're going through stuff, the odds of my looking over and seeing it are lowish. So if you have something to say, by all means, unmute yourself, say it. All right? All right. So the title of today, I am not endorsing this statement. Please let me be very clear about that. This is a quote from somebody, but I think this really accurately sums up American policy towards Native Americans after the Civil War. And so this is sort of part one of this. I think we're going to talk about this again next week. We're going to talk about the other part of this. Because today we're going to talk about the first 2 parts, which were the active wars. And then we're also going to talk about the destruction, the decimation of the buffalo. So yeah, it's a real happy, fun topic for today. So number you want to kind of keep in your head, and this floored me when I found this out. Between the end of the Civil War and 1923, the U.S. government fought 38 wars in the West against Native American tribes. 38. That's a huge number. Okay, that was basically what the U.S. Army was doing from the end of the Civil War. In fact, actually even during the Civil War. That's one of the things to remember when you're thinking about the Civil War too, is that the Union was not just fighting the Civil War. They were fighting Native American tribes at the same time. In fact, a lot of the generals that sort of got sent to the miners by Lincoln ended up being sent to places like Minnesota to fight Native Americans. So it was not just the North fighting the South. It wasn't just Lee and Grant. There was a lot going on during the Civil War. But from the end of the Civil War to 1923, 38 wars. We're not going to talk about all of them. We don't have enough time. We could do a whole semester course on the U.S. Native American policy from the Civil War through the early part of the 20th century. We could do a whole semester on it. We're not going to do that. So we're going to talk about 3 specific instances from some of these wars to start. So, and there's the, oh, good. There we go. So I think you can see that title. I can't, but you can. Sand Creek Massacre, 1864. So this was actually before the end of the Civil War that this happened. And this actually involved not so much the actual American Army as the Colorado militia, which back then was sort of like the National Guard. So basically, they got an order to confront this encampment of Native Americans near this little stream called Sand Creek. And this was in 1864. And the ultimate end of this was that 133 Native Americans were killed. Of those 133, 105 of them were women and children. This encampment was mostly women and children and like old men. There were not hardly any, if any, warriors amongst this group. Now, there were 25 U.S. soldiers, or Colorado militia soldiers, who died in this engagement. However, most historians believe that this was a result of drunkenness and friendly fire. Basically, this group of soldiers got drunk and decided to go attack a Native American encampment. This was led by a guy named Colonel John Chivington, who we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But Chivington led his men to the area. They made their sort of first pass through, killed a bunch of people, and then as they left, they went and took anything of value out of the teepees, took the horses, and then after the smoke cleared, Chivington's men came back and killed as many of the wounded as they could. They scalped dead bodies, regardless of the women, children, old men, infants. Chivington and his men dressed their weapons, hats, and gear with the scalps and other body parts that they took. This included cutting open pregnant women and taking the fetus out of the abdomen and sticking it on their bayonets. They then took these trophies to various bars and theaters in Denver where they were shown off for a relatively grateful public. This was a time period where the white citizens of Denver were like, oh, good, bunch less Native Americans to worry about. So this was, and I apologize that that's kind of nasty to think about, but sorry, history it sometimes is nasty. Chivington, who you see there, was a commander of the Colorado militia and a Methodist minister. That floors me every time I see it, that this guy was a man of God and he thought that this was okay. And here's an actual quote from this SOB. "Damn any man who sympathizes with Indians. I have come to kill Indians and believe it is right and honorable to use any means under God's heaven to kill Indians. Kill and scalp all, big and little, nits make lice." Basically, babies become big Indians. So we may as well kill them now. Yeah, man of God right there. Second thing we're going to talk about in this part is the one that if you know of any of these 3 things, you probably know about this one. The Battle of Little Bighorn, also known as, for a long time, like when I was growing up, this was not the Battle of Little Bighorn, it was Custer's Last Stand. In fact, that was the name of the battlefield. If you could go, you can go to eastern Montana and go to Little Bighorn Battlefield. But back when I was growing up, it was Custer's Last Stand battlefield. And it wasn't until the 90s that the U.S. government kind of went, wow, that's super insensitive. So now it's the Battle of Little Bighorn. It's a Little Bighorn National Battlefield. But this does involve that guy you see there, General George Armstrong Custer. In general, I put in quotation marks because he was not actually a general. He was promoted during the Civil War to sort of a temporary generalship. Once the end of the Civil War happened, and Custer was kind of a big deal in the Civil War. Promoted to general as a battlefield promotion, was present when Lee surrendered to Grant. I mean, Custer was a big thing, and then was sent out west to fight Native Americans. And Custer was one of the commanders of the U.S. 7th Cavalry, including his own battalion, the Custer Battalion, which was a force of about 700 men. And their scouts told them, oh, over this next hill is an encampment of Native Americans. Now, it's unknown if the scouts didn't mention that there were a couple thousand Native American warriors, or if they said that and Custer was like, we can beat anybody. But regardless, Custer's going to send his troops to attack this detachment of Native American warriors, and yeah, they're gonna get their butts kicked. This includes Custer's gonna die. Supposedly, by the way, his last words: "Hurrah, boys, we've got them. We'll finish them up and then go home to our station." He died minutes later. But it also killed two of his brothers, a nephew, and a brother-in-law. Most of his Custer battalion died as a result of this engagement. This was not the last word on this, however. Yeah, so there you go, George Custer. This is a painting, obviously, from the American perspective, because you have Custer in the center looking like a big old hero man. So then we come to an engagement, and I think I put that caption in the wrong place, called Wounded Knee. So this involves what was left of the 7th Cavalry after Little Bighorn. They are going to basically chase the Oglala Sioux into North Dakota, and they are going to catch them and begin killing them at this area known as Wounded Knee. And they're going to kill upwards of 300 Native Americans, and these guys were unarmed. There were not many in the way of warriors in this group. It was primarily women, children, old men. The U.S. Army, by the way, really good at killing women and children and old men. Really, really good at this time. So here's some eyewitness testimony here. This is Black Elk, a medicine man of the Oglala Lakota Nation. When I look back now from this high hill of my old age, I can still see the butchered women and children lying heaped and scattered all along the crooked gulch, as plain as when I saw them with eyes young. And I can see that something else died there in the bloody mud and was buried in the blizzard. A people's dream died there. It was a beautiful dream. The nation's hope is broken and scattered. There is no center any longer, and the sacred tree is dead. So he mentions a blizzard. This happened, and then it almost immediately began to snow. And so these dead bodies were left out in the middle of the blizzard to basically, if they weren't already dead, they were going to die of exposure. And so afterwards, a lot of these pictures are from after the fact, when basically people were hired to come in and basically put all of these Native Americans into mass graves. This is from the chief of the Oglala Sioux, American Horse. There was a woman with an infant in her arms who was killed as she almost touched the flag of truce. A mother was shot down with her infant. The child, not knowing that its mother was dead, was still nursing. The women, as I saw The women, as they were fleeing with their babies, were killed together, shot right through. And after most all of them had been killed, a cry was made that all those who were not killed or wounded should come forth, and they would be safe. Little boys came out of their places of refuge, and as soon as they came in sight, a number of soldiers surrounded them and butchered them there. So, literally, there were people trying to surrender, and the U.S. Army killed them dead as they were surrendering. Or these young boys were being told, "Oh, come on out, everything's okay now, you're going to be safe," and they came out of hiding and dead. This is Spotted Elk, who was one of the more prominent members of the Oglala Nation. Again, in the blizzard, he's been dead for a while. Rigor has set in. This is from a member of the 7th Cavalry, Hugh McGinnis. Helpless children and women with babies in their arms had been chased as far as 2 miles from the original scene of encounter and cut down without mercy by the troopers. Judging by the slaughter on the battlefield, it was suggested that the soldiers simply went berserk, for who could explain such a merciless disregard for life? As I see it, the battle was more or less a matter of spontaneous combustion, sparked by mutual distrust. Yeah, so basically he's arguing that after what had happened at Little Bighorn, these soldiers just were basically out for revenge. And again, here's big piles of bodies being tended to. So we will turn from that painful and sort of nasty subject to the destruction of the buffalo. Or bison, whatever you want to call them. To give you an idea, before Europeans arrived, it is estimated that there were as many as 50 million of these animals living on the American Great Plains. By the time we get to the 20th century, the Smithsonian had trouble finding 50 good specimens. So in the space of 400 plus years, we'd almost wiped out this animal. And I think that, again, the policy is best summed up by Colonel Richard Irving Dodge, who was an acolyte of the other guy we're going to hear from in this part. But Dodge was an American officer, and he said, "Kill every buffalo you can. Every buffalo dead is an Indian gone." So he's, if this were a comic book movie, we might say that he's monologuing. You know, he's giving away the dastardly scheme here. You know, let me explain my evil scheme. Yeah, but I think his boss does it even better. This is General Philip Sheridan, who, if you've heard of Sheridan, Wyoming, Sheridan County, Montana, any number of things, they're all named after this guy, Little Phil Sheridan. There was also a Big Phil. So he said, "These men have done more to settle the vexed Indian question than the entire regular army has done in the last 30 years. They are destroying the Indians' commissary, their food source, their basically what they used for everything. Send them powder and lead, if you will, but for the sake of a lasting peace, let them kill, skin, and sell until the buffalo is exterminated. Then your prairies can be covered with speckled cattle and the festive cowboy, who follows the hunter as the second forerunner of an advanced civilization." So Sheridan's saying, number one, if we kill all the buffalo, we're going to basically take away the Native Americans' way of life. Okay, their food source, what they used for tools and weapons and clothing and everything was tied to the buffalo. Okay, so number one, if we kill buffalo, we are going to basically make it so they starve and don't have anything to make anything out of. Okay. And then he said, once that happens, then we can have basically little individual farms and ranches. And that will mean that we have taken this area away from the savages, and it will now be a more advanced civilization. Yeah, highly, highly racist. And again, here, Sheridan giving away the evil scheme. The only good Indians I ever saw were dead, which is people twist that into the only good Indian is a dead Indian. And that's been co-opted into other things as well. But yeah, so they are going to set about. This is one of the ways they're going to outright kill, okay, with the wars and the massacres that we talked about. But then they're also going to take away the food source and what they used for tools and whatnot. Um, and that's the beginning of a cultural genocide, if not a physical one. And then the next time we're going to talk about some of the other stuff that they do, which is true cultural genocide. I mean, really and truly. So this is a big pile of literally buffalo skulls. This was how you got paid. The federal government paid people to go shoot and kill buffalo. And unlike the Native Americans, who, when they killed a few buffalo, they used every scrap and tittle of that thing. They used everything but the squeal. Uh, the white hunters and those hired by the government were basically instructed, yeah, bring us the head. And you can cut the pelt off if you want, because that was worth money. You could sell those buffalo pelts for a good amount of money. But everything else, leave it in the fields. Let it rot. And that's exactly what they did. Next week, I'm going to post an extra credit opportunity, and it's going to be touring museums. Most of them are digital virtual tours, but the Russell Museum is one you can actually go to in person. And if you do choose to go to the Russell, which unfortunately is a pay thing, I wish I had free coupons, I don't. But if you choose to go to the Russell, the one thing you have to go to, you can go to anything else at the Russell too, but the one thing you have to go to is in the basement. They have a whole exhibit on the importance of the buffalo. And one of the things they have is this picture that goes all the way up the wall, and it gives you a sense of just how tall a mound like this was. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. And it wasn't just white hunters. I mean, there were lots of white hunters that did this, but even some Native American tribes got in on this. The Comanche killed some 280,000 buffalo a year and were rewarded by the U.S. government for that. After that, the U.S. government basically wrote off the Comanche. But at the time, they were getting a fair amount of money from the U.S. government. The U.S. government was and Army was actively endorsing this slaughter. Sheridan was so Sheridan was so influential that Texas was considering making it a crime to hunt buffalo on Native American lands. Sheridan got wind of this and went down to the Texas legislature and not only spoke against the bill and got it defeated, he got them to write and pass a different bill that said that not only was that okay, that they were going to reward white hunters who went onto Native American lands and killed buffalo. They were going to give them a medal with a dead buffalo on one side and a sad looking Native American on the other side. And that's how important Sheridan was in the West, was that he got the Texas legislature to basically do a complete 180 on this issue. And again, without the buffalo, the bison roaming the Great Plains, these Native American tribes, these plains tribes, they didn't have food. They didn't have their traditional way of life. And this was meant to make them dependent. So if basically the U.S. government said, well, if they won't do us the favor of dying, at least they're going to be dependent on us, and we can basically control them. And you hear people say, well, why can't the Native Americans just get over it? Blah, 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 blah. Well, because that's not what the government wanted them to do for a very, very long time. The government was like, yeah, you become dependent on us so that we can basically break your culture. I mean, this was cultural genocide. So here's a big pile of those buffalo pelts. That was one of the things that was worth a fair amount of money. They put the skulls into these, sort of big piles. You can see them kind of stacked up there. But then in the bottom, the lower right-hand corner, you can see that's just a buffalo that was left in a field to rot, and that was very common. Again, estimates vary by the end of the 1800s. Between 80 and 2,000 buffalo were left on the plains. But basically, the only wild buffalo that were left by the early part of the 20th century was in Yellowstone National Park. And the Smithsonian had trouble finding 50 to catalog. Now this has come back to a certain extent. You have, you can get buffalo burgers at Fuddruckers now. At least last time I checked. You can buy buffalo meat in the grocery stores. But yeah, they're raised commercially now, and some of the Native American tribes have herds. There's the National Bison Range up on the Flathead. The Salish Kootenai tribes manage that. So they're becoming more common now, but around the turn of the 20th century, it was looking pretty good that species was going to be extinct. So yeah, again, this was a happy, fun set of topics this week. So your journal topics. So you need to answer both of these. I want you, number one, describe one of the three incidents we discussed in the Indian Wars, and overall, how did these wars turn out for the Native Americans? And two, what was the importance of the buffalo or bison, whatever you want to call it, to Plains Native Americans, and how did U.S. policy impact the lives of those Native peoples? So again, you need to answer both of those questions in the journal topic. So a sentence or two each, please. Full sentences, beginning with capital letters, ending with periods. Commas, optional but permissible. So are there any questions? Again, please unmute yourself and just ask. The monitor's far enough away that I have trouble reading what's in the chat. Okay, so just a reminder that next week, Tuesday, will be our only seminar. So if you are not able to tune in Tuesday, please watch the video. I'll have it posted by about noon, and you can watch it at that point. If there are no further questions, I am going to let you be free. If somebody needs to ask me anything, you can hang out and ask me once we're gone. So bye-bye, everybody.